3 years of dedication, 60 hours of work every week, not a single complaint, and my reward being shoved backstage, forced to surrender the dream role to the boss's niece. Welcome to Scarlet Vows, where stories that once seemed silent rise up as the powerful voices of millions of women who were underestimated, betrayed, and yet stood tall, more radiant than ever. In today's video, you'll follow the journey of Amy, a woman who gave her whole heart to her work, only to be cast aside by the ruthless game of family power. But instead of breaking, she quietly rewrote the script of her own life with a twist that left everyone speechless. Chapter 1. My 3 years. Traded for a glass of sparkling wine and a half-hearted applause. I once believed that effort would always be rewarded. That if I worked hard, sacrificed my time, and pushed for the greater good one day, I would be recognized. But the day I longed for most turned out to be the day I learned a harsh truth. Hard work does not always walk hand in hand with fairness. I still remember that meeting vividly. The dim yellow light of the conference room, the clinking of glasses, and the congratulatory cheers as if someone had just won a Nobel Prize. Arthur, my father-in-law, and also the CEO of the company, stood up with a champagne flute in hand and a radiant smile. I am delighted to announce our new regional director, my niece, Lily Monroe. I sat there frozen, my hands clasped tightly under the table, ice cold. Lily, she had only been here for 8 weeks. While I, the one who had given 3 years, worked 60 hours a week, grown the department from 12 people to 47, sacrificed. My personal life received nothing more than a polite applause and a hollow remark. Amy has been a wonderful mentor to Lily, and I know she will continue to support Lily in her new role. Support. I was expected to support the very person who just stole the position that should have been mine. I forced a smile, lightly clapping for the thief who had snatched what I had built. My eyes met Arthur's. For a split second, I thought I saw a flicker of guilt. Or was it just my imagination? Whatever it was, he quickly turned away, continuing his performance. Lily rose to her feet, her golden hair gleaming as if she had just stepped off a magazine cover. Her designer suit immaculate, her radiant smile polished in the way only a pampered heiress could perfect. For moments like this. Thank you, Uncle Arthur. I'm truly excited to learn from Amy during this transition period. Transition? The word sounded as though I had just died and she was my successor. I walked back to my office silently like a shadow. Every glance from colleagues, some pitying, some avoiding, only deepened the ache in my chest. On the wall still hung my 3 Employee of the Year awards, one for each year I had been here. I looked at them, then glanced back at the text from Joseph, my husband. How was the announcement? Finally official, huh? Official? Yes. Officially putting an end to the illusion that I was ever truly valued. I typed back, "We'll talk tonight," then set my phone down. The rest of the day dragged on like a badly written play. I sat through meetings, answered emails, pretended nothing had happened. But by 5 o'clock, my jaw ached from holding up the fake smile. Arthur appeared at my office door just as I was packing up. "Amy, may we have a word?" I invited him in. That very chair 3 months ago was where he had told me the promotion is basically just a formality now. Now sitting across from me was a completely different Arthur. Careful, defensive, trying to justify something he knew could never truly be justified. "I know today wasn't easy for you. Is that so?" I replied, my tone still professional. "You are very important to this company. Lily will need someone with experience like yours to learn from. I hope you'll take on the role of senior advisor." Train the woman who stole my place. I didn't say it aloud. I only looked at him unblinking. I asked a simple question. 3 months ago you told me the promotion was mine. What changed? He averted his gaze. The company's needs have shifted. Lily brings new perspectives, youthful ideas, 8 weeks of youth. traded for 3 years of results. I nodded slowly. Arthur said, "You're taking this too personally." I gave a faint smile. "This is my career, Uncle. My life. How exactly am I supposed to frame betrayal in the right way?" "Your family," he said, as if that explained everything. And perhaps, in his world, it did. Being family meant I had to step aside. I had to sacrifice. I had to accept being a supporting role. But no, not this time. Chapter 2. Don't mistake my silence for acceptance. The next morning, I still arrived at the office on time as usual. Smiling, greeting, nodding, pretending I was fine. Everyone in the corporate world does that, don't they? Wear the polite mask, bury all the anger and pain beneath a layer of lipstick and morning coffee. Lily walked into my office at exactly 9 a.m., on time, enthusiastic, not a smear out of place in her lipstick. "Amy, I'm really looking forward to learning from you. Uncle Arthur said you're the one who knows this department best." I invited her to sit open the file expressionless. "Let's start with our most important client, Morrison Industries. They've been working with us since before you even graduated high school." For the next 2 hours, I guided Lily through managing client accounts, every habit, every small preference of each person at Morrison. She took notes nonstop, but the more we spoke, the clearer it became she had no grasp of what I had spent 3 years building. Every question she asked revealed something she lacked, not only experience, but also a sense of responsibility. So if Mr. Morrison calls furious about a delayed shipment, what should I say? I answered directly, locking eyes with her. "Don't promise anything you can't deliver. You listen, acknowledge the issue, and give a concrete timeline with a few buffer days built in. And if he threatens to cancel the contract?" That question made me pause. Morrison Industries accounts for 30% of our annual revenue. If we lose them, 47 people will lose their jobs, including you. By noon, I was drained. She was too naive to understand this game, but I kept pushing myself, kept my composure, until I happened to overhear the conversation in Arthur's office. I was reheating my soup when his voice carried through the thin wall. "Lily is adapting quickly. The transition is going smoothly." Lily's voice followed, a little hesitant. "Are you sure Amy's okay with this?" I froze. My ears burned. "My dear Amy is reliable, but we need change. She only knows how to stick to old processes. We need fresh air and new direction. You are the future." A chill ran down my spine. "But some clients still only ask for her." Lily replied softly. Arthur chuckled, and that laugh it cut like a sharp, thin blade. "That's exactly the problem. They're too comfortable with Amy. I want them forced to adapt to someone willing to challenge old ways of thinking, not just cater to them." I had spent 3 years building trust, and he called it a weakness. "She does seem hurt, though," Lily murmured. "You have a kind heart, Lily. But business isn't about feelings. Amy will adjust. She always does. That's what makes her useful, predictable, compliant without another option." Without another option, my hand gripped the counter so tight my knuckles turned white. Not from hurt this time, but because for the first time in my life, I felt a fire smoldering within me. A cold fury, not screaming, but calculating. That afternoon, I continued training Lily as if nothing had happened. Still patient, still professional, but inside I had already started planning. Every word I spoke, every piece of information I shared, I documented carefully. Not for Lily's benefit, but to remind myself of my own worth. To remember that everything keeping this company running smoothly was built by me. When the clock struck 5, I shut down my computer, neat and calm. On the way home, I already knew what I needed to do. That night, while Joseph worked late, I sat alone with my laptop at the kitchen table. I typed each word slowly, without rush, without emotion. "Dear Arthur, I hereby submit my formal resignation from the position of Senior Operations Director at Alden Ventures." No complaints, no accusations. Just an ending, clear, decisive, and dignified. I signed my name, set down the pen. For the first time in months, I felt weightless. Chapter 3. the resignation letter, and the final smile. The next morning, I wore my favorite navy blue suit, the one that always made me feel strong and in control. I put on the pearl earrings my grandmother had left me, a reminder. Composure is power. I arrived at the office earlier than usual. On my desk, I placed the resignation letter dead center perfectly, aligned not a millimeter off. Then I powered up my computer, answered emails, reviewed reports, helped Tom in accounting fix a formula in his spreadsheet as if today were just another ordinary Monday. At exactly 10 a.m., I picked up the white envelope and walked to Arthur's office. His secretary, Marie, smiled. "Good morning, Amy. He's just finishing a call. You can wait a moment." I sat down, nodding politely. I'd always liked Marie, not because she was friendly, but because she was never fake. In the 3 years I'd been here, she was one of the few who treated me like a person, not a tool. The door opened. Arthur stepped out, phone still to his ear, motioning me inside. I sat across from him as he snapped his laptop shut and ended the call with his usual phrase, "Send me a confirmation email." He glanced at me, hurried. "What is it, Amy? I'm booked solid until 3 this afternoon." I said nothing, only slid the envelope gently across the desk. Arthur looked at it in confusion, then tore it open with a letter opener. I watched every flicker cross his face, from surprise to confusion to panic. "You're joking. This is some kind of negotiation tactic, isn't it?" He shot to his feet, chair rolling back, his eyes wide. I remained seated, hands folded. "I'm completely serious. But, Amy, we only just promoted Lily 2 weeks ago. You can't walk out now. You're the only one who knows our key clients inside out. Lily needs you." I tilted my head slightly, smiling faintly. "She's very enthusiastic. I'm sure Lily will manage." Arthur began pacing behind his desk like a caged animal. "This is about the promotion, isn't it? I know you're disappointed, but we can work something out, another title, more authority, a raise if necessary." I cut him off. My voice calm, but no longer soft. "Arthur, stop. This isn't about titles anymore. This is about respect. And I've realized I'll never have that here. That's not true. You're important to this company. Your family." I rose, smoothing the edge of my blazer, meeting his eyes head on. "Family is family. The place where I'm forced to train my replacement, while no one has the courage to tell me the truth. Where behind my back they call me predictable, outdated, with no other options." Arthur's face drained of color. He stammered. You heard that? Every word?" The room fell into silence, nothing but the ticking of the wall clock counting down each second of his lost control. "What do you want?" "Amy, a director's title, a corner office, money." My hand was already on the doorknob. I turned back. "I want to work somewhere people see my true worth. Somewhere that doesn't think 42 is past my prime. Somewhere that doesn't choose bloodline over competence." Arthur opened his mouth to say something, but I was already stepping out. Marie looked at me, worried. "Are you all right?" I gave her a soft smile, but this time it was real. Better than ever. I returned to my office. For the first time in months, I felt truly unburdened. No more pretending, no more hoping for recognition from those who would never value me. I had 2 weeks to organize files, transition responsibilities, and say goodbye. But in my heart, that old chapter had already closed out, and I was beginning to feel excited for the new one, where I would no longer be the shadow in the corner, but the light of my own making. Chapter 4. Never underestimate a woman who knows her own worth. 2 days after I handed in my resignation, whispers began to ripple through the office. I didn't need to announce it in a place where gossip spread faster than internal emails. A single white envelope on Arthur's desk was enough to set the whole company buzzing. Some avoided my gaze. Some pretended not to know. But Margaret, the older accountant who always carried ginger tea in her handbag, walked up to my desk, placed a small cookie on it, and sighed. "It should have been yours." I simply nodded. There was no need to justify, explain, or save face for anyone anymore. I had chosen to walk away in silence, but not in weakness. Lily, of course, remained blissfully naive. She walked into my office with bright eyes and a voice that always sounded like she was speaking at a startup seminar. "Amy, I'm so grateful for all your guidance. I'm really lucky to have you showing me the way I almost laughed." She had no idea that the way I was showing her was the way out. "It's all right, Lily. I just hope you understand. This job isn't only about skill. It requires listening, understanding people, and above all, humility." She nodded eagerly, though I knew she didn't fully grasp what I meant. Arthur, on the other hand, avoided me completely. No emails, no calls, no casual visits to my office as before. I guessed he was busy trying to control the damage, but the irony was amusing. The only damage he truly feared was losing a cog in the machine he once thought was so easily replaceable. But this cog had learned how to run on its own. That evening, as I was reviewing old client files at home to prepare for Lily's transition, Joseph, my husband, walked into the room carrying a mug of hot cocoa. "Are you all right?" he asked softly. I nodded. "Actually, I've never felt so right." Joseph sat down beside me. "I've always believed you deserve far more than this." I smiled, leaning my head against his shoulder. "Now I believe it too." The next day, I walked into the office like a completely different person, no longer trying to please anyone, no longer seeking recognition from those judgmental eyes. I was simply there to finish my final stretch on my own terms. I spent my time organizing all the client data, rebuilding the training manuals, not for Arthur, not for Lily, but because I wanted to leave as a professional right up to the very last moment. And then something unexpected happened. That afternoon, a call from an unknown number flashed across my phone. I hesitated for a few seconds, then answered. "Amy Hayes, this is Rebecca Chin, HR Director at Horizon Tech. I heard your name from Daniel Morrison. He was very impressed with how you handle crises in client care." My knees nearly gave out. Horizon Tech, one of the fastest growing companies in the region, a place that valued competence over bloodlines. And Daniel Morrison, the biggest client of my former company, was the one who had recommended me. Rebecca continued. "We have a regional director position open. Daniel thinks you'd be the perfect fit. Would you be interested in discussing further?" My heart raced. This wasn't just a new job. It was recognition. It was the doorway to a new chapter, one I would step into as myself, without anyone's permission. "I'd be very interested, Rebecca." I hung up, gazing out the window. The late winter sky no longer looked as bleak as it had weeks ago. The sun broke through soft, but certain. And I understood sometimes the moment you let go of what no longer deserves you, something better finds its way to you. Chapter 5. When one door closes, another opens wider. I still remember my very first interview with Horizon Tech as if it were yesterday. Unlike the suffocating atmosphere at Alden Ventures, this office was bright, modern, and above all, no one asked me whose family I belonged to. I walked into the meeting room where Rebecca rose to greet me with a warm smile. Beside her was Marcus, the CEO, a middle-aged man with sharp eyes and a humility that felt almost disarming. "Amy," he said, "we've heard so much about you from both clients and former partners. Today is simply about talking to see whether your values and our company culture truly align." I sat down, and for the first time in a very long time, I wasn't afraid. I didn't feel the need to strain myself to prove my worth. I just told my story, what I had done, what I had endured, and what I hoped for in the next chapter of my career. Marcus listened with full attention. No interruptions, no judgmental looks. And when I recounted how I had been forced to train the very person who was replacing me without warning, his brows furrowed. "You did not deserve to be treated that way, Amy, but I'm glad you chose to stand up." Those words were short, but they nearly brought me to tears. Just 3 days later, Rebecca sent an official email and offer for the role of Regional Operations Director, the very title I had once been promised at Alden Ventures. But this time it was real. A 30% salary increase, company equity, flexible working arrangements, and best of all, a team I would have the authority to build myself. Joseph was the first person I embraced after printing out the contract. "See, I told you," he whispered. "They would recognize your worth as soon as the right people saw it." My first week at Horizon Tech felt like a dream. People called me boss, but without the sneers or mockery of my old workplace. They openly shared information, sought my advice, and welcomed me into high-level strategic meetings. On the first day of my second week, Marcus suddenly called me into his office. "I want you to lead the restructuring of our customer service process. Daniel Morrison just expanded his contract with us thanks to your proposal. Do whatever you think is right." I only nodded, but inside my heart surged. No need for permission, no politics, no circling around. Just competence and trust. The project went more smoothly than I had imagined. My team not only kept up, but exceeded expectations. Clients began sending thank you emails for the clear improvements in service. A week later, I received news 3 former partners of Alden Ventures had reached out asking to transfer to Horizon Tech. On one condition, I would personally oversee their accounts. I didn't laugh. I didn't gloat. I simply felt clarity. I had once been a shadow in someone else's game. Now I was the player, and I set the rules. That evening, I poured myself a glass of red wine, sat on the balcony, and looked out over the peaceful city lights. I was no longer the woman left behind in a boardroom with a champagne flute and an empty chair. I was Amy Hayes. And I was rewriting the very definition of the word worthy. Chapter 6. When what was lost returns, but is no longer needed. One Tuesday morning, as I was reviewing the quarterly revenue report for a strategy meeting, the desk phone in my office rang. The caller ID didn't display a name, but something about it felt familiar. I picked up. "This is Amy Hayes." Of a second of silence. Then a man's voice, warm, deep, but heavy with exhaustion. "Hello, Amy. It's Daniel Morrison." I instinctively straightened in my chair. Daniel, the client, who had once been my largest account at Alden Ventures. The man I'd saved from 3 logistics crises in a single quarter. "I hope I'm not disturbing you." "Not at all," I replied, keeping my tone steady. He drew in a deep breath. "I just wanted to share some news. And also to say thank you. Morrison Industries will officially end its partnership with Alden Ventures at the close of this quarter. The reason their new leadership doesn't understand the true value of a business relationship. And the only person who ever made me feel truly heard was you." I stayed silent for a few seconds, not from shock, but because emotions surged in like a tide. Happiness, anger, and a faint regret. "I understand," I said softly. Daniel continued. "I also want you to know, referring you to Horizon Tech was the best decision I've ever made for a person. You deserve more than everything they ever denied you." When I hung up, my chest felt lighter, and then unexpectedly, like a domino effect, other calls began to come. A week later, Horizon Tech received inquiries from 3 major clients who had once belonged to Alden Ventures, all of them insisting on transferring their accounts to me. No complaints. No gossip, just words like, "We need someone who understands us. We need the stability Amy used to bring." Rebecca, my boss, sat across from me, her eyes alight almost in disbelief at what was happening. "Amy, you haven't just brought in clients. You've brought in trust, credibility, and quality. Horizon Tech needs you at a higher level." A few days later, I was officially promoted to Director of Operations and Strategic Client Development, with authority to hire and design a new internal training system. But the pinnacle wasn't the promotion. It was an unexpected call from Margaret, my former colleague at Alden Ventures. Her voice trembled. "Amy, they're about to start mass layoffs." Morrison pulling out was the first blow. Now other clients are following. Half the finance department has already received notices. They're blaming it all on your departure. I sat still, my heart tightening. I had never intended to destroy Alden Ventures. All I ever wanted was to leave a place that no longer valued me. But amid the chaos, I thought of Margaret. of the truly kind ones. I glanced at Horizon Tech's staffing expansion plan and found myself saying, "Do you want to come over here? I'll introduce you to Rebecca." "We need people like you," Margaret cried. I could hear her sobs woven into her words of gratitude. When I set the phone down, there was no bitterness, no desire for revenge, only the sense of doing right for the right person. I once thought recognition was the most beautiful ending to any journey, but now I know to be chosen for your true worth, and to have the power to choose who walks beside you, that is the sweetest revenge. Chapter 7, The Reunion Gala. When the past bows before the present, I received the invitation on a Friday afternoon. A crisp white envelope heavy in my hand, embossed with golden lettering. Alden Ventures cordially invites Amy Hayes to the annual Recognition Gala. My heart sank. It had been more than half a year since I walked away, since my last conversation with Arthur, and those words he never thought I'd hear. I stared at the card wondering, is this a new ploy, an attempt at reconciliation, or a trap dressed up as honor? That evening I told Joseph. He said only one thing: if you go as the woman they never thought would return with her head held high. I chose a deep green silk dress, the color of strength and maturity. My hair in a sleek bun lips painted with wine-red lipstick. Not to impress them, but to remind myself I am no longer the compliant Amy they once knew. Rebecca came with me. "I want to see the place that once dared to sideline you," she said with a quiet smile. The grand hall ballroom was unchanged, lavish, cold, awash in lights. But this time I didn't walk in as a former employee. I walked in as the fiercest competitor they had ever faced. A few former colleagues came over to greet me, their eyes mixing curiosity with admiration. Margaret hugged me tightly. "You didn't just change your life, Amy. You pulled us out of the quicksand. You showed us we could choose." Then the lights dimmed and Arthur stepped onto the stage. He looked older, his hair thinner streaked with gray. His eyes no longer carried arrogance. His voice was still deep but slower now, as though weighed down by a year of failure. "This past year has been a trial. We lost some of our most talented people, but it taught us something: capability should never be overshadowed by connections." My chest tightened. And then he continued, "Tonight, we honor those who laid the foundation for our successes, even if they are no longer part of this company. The award for outstanding leadership goes to Amy Hayes." I froze. The entire hall erupted in applause. I heard my name echo like a bell from a world I had already left behind. Beneath the table, Rebecca squeezed my hand. "Go. This stage belongs to you." I walked up. The spotlight shone on me, but this time it didn't blind. It clarified. Arthur handed me the crystal trophy, his eyes sorrowful, tinged with regret. I held the microphone and inhaled deeply. I didn't come here to reclaim anything. I came to affirm one truth: a person's worth is not measured by blind loyalty, but by their courage to walk away when they are no longer valued. The ballroom fell silent. I turned to face my former colleagues, then looked straight at Arthur. "Thank you for not choosing me, because if you had, I might still be bound by the chains of never enough. It was only when you cast me aside that I truly learned how far I could soar." I bowed my head, placed the trophy back on the podium, and turned away. The eyes that followed me were no longer filled with pity, as they once had been, but with respect and silent awe. That night as I drove home, Rebecca asked, "How does it feel?" I gazed out the window, the city shimmering like forgotten dreams reignited. Like I just buried an old version of myself and came back to life. Chapter 8. Old Faces, Scars, and a Future Transformed. I thought that after that gala night, everything would finally be over. But the truth is, old scars always know how to resurface at the moments we least expect. One morning, as I was reviewing the quarterly revenue report, my phone buzzed. An unfamiliar number. I almost didn't pick up. But something in my gut told me this call would mark a turning point. "Amy, it's me. Arthur." The name made me sit up straight. His voice, no longer arrogant, it carried exhaustion and something else, something that sounded almost like defeat. I don't know where to begin, only that I was wrong about so many things. I stayed silent, letting him continue. Lily has resigned. Morrison pulled out. Margaret, she's working for you now, and here I am standing in the middle of a company that's bleeding out day by day. I didn't call to beg for help. I called to apologize. For the first time, I heard the apology I had waited 3 years to hear. I replied, calm but firm, "Thank you for saying that." But Arthur, an apology. It can't fix a broken system. It only proves that at last you've begun to see what I saw a long time ago. I hung up my heart light as though I'd never carried the weight of that grudge, because now I no longer needed victory over Arthur. I had already won over myself. A week later, Rebecca pulled me into the conference room. We're expanding, and I want you to lead a new branch in Chicago. I froze. A new branch. In the very city I once thought was too big for me. I thought back to my old self, the woman who once cried in her car after being cast aside. The woman who believed that if she just worked hard enough, opportunity would eventually come. Now I no longer waited for opportunity. I was being entrusted to lead it. I'll do it, I said, without hesitation. A few weeks later, I packed my belongings to move into my new office in Chicago. Before leaving, I arranged a special dinner with Joseph. Over candlelight and soft music, he held my hand. I know it wasn't easy for you to survive all this, but I'm proud that you never lost yourself. You only needed to be seen. I laughed. And now I'm not just being seen. I'm shining. On the flight to Chicago, I looked out at the vast, blue sky through the small window. The clouds drifted by like the past, distant, fading, yet never erased. They remained reminding me of the road I had traveled. I was no longer Amy, the one they overlooked. I was Amy, the one they would forever regret losing. Chapter 9. The ending is not revenge, but rising Chicago. Welcome me with a cold wind, sharp bracing, but full of clarity. A new city, a new office, a new team. Everything was different. But inside me, something had changed even more. I was no longer chasing recognition. I was the one giving it. 3 months after stepping into the role of branch director, we had already surpassed our first quarter's targets, partly because I had brought with me loyal clients who trusted me, but mostly because I had learned how to lead from my own experience of rejection. I did not manage with fear. I did not assign roles based on bloodline connections or inflated resumes. I chose people based on persistence, transparency, and sincerity. The very qualities that once upon a time others had dismissed as my weaknesses. One day Rebecca called me. Arthur has officially retired. Alden Ventures has been acquired. Lily is now an influencer for female leadership inspiration, but she's disabled her comments. I laughed. Not with glee, not with spite, just with relief. Everything has returned to where it belongs, I said. From time to time, I still receive messages from a few of the old ones. Margaret had been promoted to head of finance at Horizon Tech. Tom from accounting sent me photos of his daughter being accepted into college. They were the ones who stayed behind but eventually found their way forward because someone had dared to step out first. That same day, I sat across from a middle-aged female candidate in an interview. In her resume, she had written, "Rejected for being too stable." I looked at her and smiled. Stability is not a flaw. It's the foundation on which everything else is built. I knew it because I had once been that woman, and now I was the one making the decisions. Before ending the day, I gazed out the office window. The Chicago skyline shimmered with city lights. I thought of the path I had traveled from that cold boardroom where I once overheard Arthur call me someone with no other options to this very moment, where I was the one shaping every option for myself. No, I didn't need anyone to pay the price, because I had become the very thing they never imagined possible, a woman who cannot be replaced. Sometimes the best revenge isn't making them suffer. It's letting them watch you shine in the very place they never thought you'd reach. If you feel that Amy embodies the saying, silence is the sharpest counterattack, drop a comment below, I choose power over pity, or share a moment when you rose from injustice. And don't forget to hit like if this story resonated with you, and subscribe to Scarlet Vows to keep walking alongside these powerful journeys of rebirth from the shadows to the spotlight. See you in the next video. And remember, this women can forgive, but they never forget.